Don't get Jack Hughes angry. You wouldn't like him when he's angry. Despite seeing red, the Devils still lost to LA by a score of 2-1. The only positive thing is that the Stadium Series is right around the corner. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on our Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Chalky, play-by-play announcer, Devils Wire for Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. The calm before the storm, if you would. The New Jersey Devils hosted the LA Kings a few nights before they are set to head back to their old stomping ground over the Meadowlands to participate in a Stadium Series against the Philadelphia Flyers at MetLife Stadium. And unfortunately, the Devils lost in heartbreaking fashion. Worth mentioning that neither team scored at even strength, and Jack Hughes, he is like the Hulk. You wouldn't like him when he's angry. Don't get him angry. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about some of my main takeaways from the game. Then in the second segment, we're going to talk about the scrum between Viktor Arvidsson and also Jack Hughes, what led up to it, who was in the right, who was in the wrong, and also we need to highlight some of the missed calls by the referees because I think it screwed the Devils royally. And then the third and final segment, like I do with every post-game recap, I will compare the stats and give the Devils a letter grade. So here's some of my thoughts heading into the matchup. I thought this was a good opportunity for the Devils to rack up 2 more points in the standings because the Kings lost their more recent matchup to the Buffalo Sabres by a score of 7-0. So I think it's safe to say that losing by a touchdown and a field goal in the sport of hockey can be deflating for about anyone. So I really thought this was going to go into the Devils' favor. Unfortunately, the Kings were just the stronger opponent, and I know a lot of people are going to point at their record, but keep in mind, similar to the Devils, they are also in the hunt for a wild card position. So you can't underestimate their capabilities. And speaking of underestimating, I need to talk quickly about Quinton Byfield, who also scored in this matchup for LA, because I talked about it in my more recent episode in which I discussed the possibility of the Devils getting the services of UC Saros. And Elliot Friedman reported, in addition to Pierre LeBrun, saying that a one-for-one type of deal of Quinton Byfield is not going to get LA UC Saros. And basically, I was just like, yeah, no duh, because Byfield hasn't really had the best starts to his NHL career. But this season, he has really turned it around. So entering this matchup, he appeared in 48 games. He has 16 goals, 22 assists for a grand total of 38 points. Obviously, now he has 17 goals. But I just had to say that I underestimated Quinton Byfield and his overall capabilities. And I even put this out on social media that I think the chances of the Devils getting UC Saros is slim to none, because if a one-for-one type of deal involving Byfield won't get LA Saros, then what chance do the Devils have? But anyway, enough talking about La La Land. Let's talk about this game in general for the Devils. Like, what went wrong for them and what were some of my main takeaways from each of the periods? So I would say in the first period for the Devils, they got off to somewhat of a slow start. But this game was a hard-fought battle, and I think that was quite evident. However, if you look on the shots on goal differential, 13-5 in favor of the Kings. The Devils were relying heavily on Nico, who has started his 3rd straight game in order to try to squeak away with the victory. We saw the Devils in Smashville make Saros go the extra mile in order to try to help his team come away with the victory. And now the tables sort of turned in this game because Dawes had to make a series of excellent moves to make sure that the Devils didn't let up the first goal of the game. But unfortunately, like it's been going the whole season, the Devils gave up the first goal of the game, but it didn't come until the second period. But to add insult to injury, it was a shorthanded goal thanks to Kopitar, because what had happened was that Lindy Ruff, he took a gamble. He left his top power play unit out there for maybe a little too long, because if they weren't out there for the entire 2 minutes of that man advantage, then it was very close. So you saw Luke and Jack, they both got burned, and then Jack was just very late on the back check, and as a result, Kopitar just found the back of the net. It was 1-0. But speaking of the special teams, like I just said moments ago, neither team scored at even strength. So the Devils, thanks to Tyler Toffoli, who got his second power play goal in the past 3 games, made it a 1-1 affair, and that sparked some new life for the Devils. It seemed like the Devils cleaned it up a little bit. They didn't generate that many more shots on Riddick. However, they did limit the Kings' shots on Nico Daws, because at the conclusion of the second period, it was 8-7 in favor of the Kings. And the second period, boy, the chippiness was on full display. And we saw Jack Hughes just go Bruce Banner, transforming into the Hulk, because he was not a happy camper. But we'll talk more about that in the second segment. And then in the third period, what's something that I've been talking about on this show recently? I said that if the Devils are in a deadlock position heading into the final period of regulation, then they got to do whatever it takes to send it into OT, because every point is crucial at this moment of time, and you can't afford to leave points on the table. So it was a hard-fought game. It wasn't the prettiest of efforts, but the Devils were hanging on, and at least they were fighting on back. So I can't take that away from them. But at the same time, it's just like I can't help but be a little ticked off knowing that they put up this valiant effort, but they still have nothing to show for it. So the rest of the way, if they are tied in the third period of regulation, you have to send it to OT so you can solidify yourself at least 1 point. And they weren't able to do so, and they were playing with fire. So I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. It was a power play goal thanks to Quinn Byfield. Aside from the battle between Arvidsson and Hughes, it was definitely a matchup in which we saw a decent amount of penalties, and the Devils were shorthanded because, unfortunately, Curtis Lazar was spending time in the penalty box for holding Pierre-Luc Dubois. Now, I don't think that quantified as a penalty, but throughout the course of this game, we saw a lot of missed calls on both ends, and unfortunately, the Devils were just on the short end of the stick, and they were playing with fire because we all know their PK is very mediocre. So it's just like you got to try to do whatever it takes to just make sure you play a clean brand of hockey, and the Devils weren't able to do so. And they made a valiant effort once again to try to tie the game. It seemed like they had a few golden opportunities, but it just fell short. So going back to that Lazar penalty, I think it was a soft call from the referees, and I don't agree with it, and it came back to bite the Devils, but you can't use that as an excuse because you had some other opportunities to try to tie the game, and we're going to talk about that in the second segment. Now, before we continue with today's episode, I want to tell you guys about Camino Consulting. How would you like to get to know someone better in an hour than you would in a year? Understanding one another better prevents small misunderstandings from becoming a big ongoing fight. After providing more than 20 years of service to small and mid-sized businesses, helping management groups navigate conflict and onboarding new employees, Camino is offering a digital seminar for families and couples. Did your Valentine's gift of tickets to the game not go as well as you would have liked? Well, get the couples and family online seminar for 20% off for the rest of the month of February using the discount code LOCKEDON. Again, that is the discount code LOCKEDON for 25% off the rest of the month at CaminoConsulting.ca, or mention Locked On when reaching out for a business seminar and receive the first 5 profiles free. Okay, let's talk about some players that caught my eye for the Devils. So the first player that I want to talk about is Nico Daws, because Nico Daws, like I said in the first segment, he was very strong in between the pipes. Like, he was making acrobatic saves. And did I mention that he had hip surgery last year? Would you have believed it if I told you at this very moment? That's how good he's been for the Devils. And this was his third straight start in net. Vitek Vanacek is still out with his lower body injury, and Akira Schmid is backing him up. Now, here's the thing that I have to say, and I hate to be this person, but you have to take your time with Nico Daws. You do not want to overwork him, because if you guys remember the last 10 or so years, the Devils have faced this problem. So here are a couple examples that come to mind. Corey Schneider and also Mackenzie Blackwood. So Corey Schneider, he got off to a really good start in a Devil sweater, but then towards the end, he started to crash and burn. What happened? Well, he was relied on a little too much, and he got injured, and it resulted in him being a little inconsistent. And the same can be said for Mackenzie Blackwood, because I feel as though Mackenzie Blackwood still has a lot of upside, but the problem for him was he could never stay healthy, which is why the Devils decided to move on from him last offseason. And I don't want the same thing to happen for Nico Daws. Now, when looking at these past 3 games for New Jersey, they've played the Kraken, they played the Predators, and obviously they just played the Kings. And I get for a team like the Kings, you probably want to put Nico Daws in net because Akira Schmid, he's been a little up and down this year, and his tenure in Utica hasn't really been all that much better. In fact, he's taken a few steps backwards statistic-wise. So you got to put Akira Schmid in at some point so that way you're not overworking Nico Daws. And now, is Nico going to be given a 4th straight start when the Devils take their game to MetLife Stadium in the Stadium Series? That's the main question I have. Who are we going to see in net? Most likely, if I had to put my money where my mouth is, I would say Nico Daws. But it's just like that would be his 4th straight game. And I know I'm being a little hypocritical because I talked about how Saros can suit up in a good amount of the games, but he already has that NHL experience because he's been doing this for a few years after the retirement of Pekka Rinne. And something I just mentioned to you guys is that Nico Daws had hip surgery last year, and now he's in a position that I don't think he foresaw himself in at the beginning of this year, because I think a lot of people were anticipating for Vitek Vanecek and Akira Schmid to be the go-to combo for New Jersey. So that's my only advice for Lindy Ruff, which is Nico Daws has been incredible, and he's been definitely a big bright spot for the Devils. And he's one of the reasons why the Devils have gotten a decent amount of points their last 5 or so games. But you got to be a little careful because I don't want anything bad to happen to him. So I'm just saying this for precautionary reasons. Now, let's talk about Jack Hughes, because I have a feeling that he is not going to be invited to the NHL award show because he's not going to win the Hart. And he's certainly not going to be a finalist for the Lady Byng Award because this season he has already racked up 12 minutes in the penalty box. Now, this might surprise you guys. This is not his career high because last year he only had 6 minutes spent in the sin bin, and the year prior he had 0 in 49 game appearances. However, during the 2021 COVID-shortened 56-game season, he had 16 minutes spent in the penalty box. But remember, Jack Hughes played in all 56 of those games. And up to this point, he is suited up in 37. So he is well on the pace to top his career high in minutes spent in the sin bin. But that's not the point. We need to talk about the battle he had between himself and Viktor Arvidsson, because what had happened was that he and Arvidsson were battling it out, and Arvidsson had a late elbow on Jack Hughes, and Hughes stood his ground and did not take too kindly for that, which is well within his right. But the Devils should be going on the power play because, once again, Arvidsson is in the wrong for elbowing Jack Hughes, and Hughes is just trying to stick up for himself, right? No. Hughes gets assessed a roughing call, so it's 4-on-4 hockey, and then we see both of them chirping in the penalty box. Now, I'm not a professional lip reader. I don't think anyone is on social media, but everyone made a good guess as to what he was saying to Arvidsson. He says, "People pay to watch me play." Now, a lot of people, including the people at Barstool, are saying that was cocky of Jack Hughes. But the thing is like, he does have a point, which is this is a home game for New Jersey. He's the franchise player. He's the face of the organization. He's going to be the future Hart Trophy winner if he can just stay freaking healthy. But he is the main marketing technique for the Devils. Like, he's the reason why there's so much butts in the seat at the Prudential Center, because he is the showstopper. It is the Jack Hughes show, and he gives all that razzle dazzle on offense, and he's been a big light of hope for New Jersey. And so he does have a point. So if you want to say that's cocky, if you want to say that's arrogant, well, he does have a point. So did he have to say it? No, but he's not wrong. So he is the showstopper in New Jersey. So I thought that was quite funny. But what happened afterwards is something that I want to talk about as well. So once both players serve their time in the penalty box, Jack Hughes has an open breakaway opportunity. But who's there to try to suppress him? It's Arvidsson once again. And Arvidsson sort of put his arm around Jack's neck just a tad bit. And Jack is wondering, where's the penalty? And there was an open net opportunity. He missed it because he was probably a little pissed off. And he talked to the referees. And I guess they said something that he didn't like. And he slammed his stick in frustration. And once again, I'm not a professional lip reader, but if you look back at the replay, he said something along the lines, freaking bull crap. Hopefully that's okay with the network. I don't want to get in trouble for that. Then afterwards, we saw Pierre-Luc Dubois. He was going at Jack's little brother, Luke, and Brendan Smith wasn't having it. So this game was chippy, to say the least. And who was in the right? Who was in the wrong in this case? Well, Arvidsson was in the wrong initially for elbowing Jack Hughes, and Hughes is well within his right to stick up for himself. But when looking at the aftermath of it, that really should have been a penalty assessed to Arvidsson once again, because he did tangle his arm around Jack's neck just a tad bit. So that kind of bothers Jack Hughes on the open breakaway. So shouldn't that be a penalty shot, or that should just be something like Jack Hughes needs to be protected in that case, because he had an open opportunity to try to score. And then afterwards, he is so angry that he actually has an open net opportunity and he missed the side of the net. We don't see Jack Hughes miss that type of shot. And then he breaks his stick, and Jack could have been assessed a penalty for breaking his stick on the ice and going to the bench. And luckily Eric Holla was there to calm him down. But anyway, I saw the discussion on social media. People were like, ooh, we like this Jack Hughes. We like it when he's a little edgy. We like it when he's a little pissed off. And I would have to agree with that. I do like it when Jack Hughes and his teammates in general are just playing with a sense of urgency. But the thing is, you have to tame the beast a little bit. You have to control your emotions. So he is well within his right to be frustrated, because that should have been a penalty assessed to Arvidsson when he was on the open breakaway. No ands, ifs, or buts about it. The referees completely missed it. But at the same time, after you didn't get the penalty assessed to you, you still had an open net opportunity to score it on Riddick, but you were seeing red. You were so angry that you couldn't focus. And how do I know that played a factor? Well, let's just use common sense. Have you ever been so angry to the point where you can't focus, you can't think straight, you're all emotional and things like that? We've all experienced it. We're human. And Jack Hughes had a very human moment, because I know a lot of people look at athletes as public figures, but they're humans at the end of the day. So if I had to make an educated guess, and I'm not a therapist or anything, I think Jack was just a little ticked off, and it just shifted his focus a little bit. And that's why he missed that open net opportunity, because he could have given the Devils the lead, but he was so angry that he missed it, just point blank. And when he's going back to the bench, he smashes his stick in frustration and he's yelling expletives. And I think that's proof as to how angry he was. So I like this from Jack Hughes, but the one thing I just say is tame the beast a little bit, control yourself, and it's all good to play with passion, and it does fire your team up at the end of the day, but you don't want to do anything that could put your team in jeopardy. So once again, he missed a potential game-winning goal, and he also could have given his team a penalty because he smashed his stick out of frustration, and the debris ended up on the rink. And I was listening back to the clip courtesy of the Kings broadcast, and they also said that Jack could have been assessed a penalty, but there were so many missed penalty calls in this game that it was ridiculous. So Jack Hughes playing a little angry, but it's not going to make him any friends at the committee for him to be a finalist for the Lady Byng Award. But I think his chances of trying to win it this year pretty slim to none, but that's okay. I'd rather him try to compete for the Hart Trophy anyway. Now, before we compare the stats and give the Devils a letter grade, let me tell you guys about the Game Time app. So I've actually used the Game Time app before to buy myself some NBA tickets. I saw a baseball game over the summer with my brother. So last minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. Views from all the seats in the venue, lowest price guaranteed, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, etc. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's a place to find last-minute seats. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create a code and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Okay, let's compare the stats, give the Devils a letter grade, and get out of here. So shots on goal differential, 29-27 in favor of the Kings. The Devils made up some ground in that category thanks to their valiant effort in the final period of regulation. Face-off percentage, the Devils got thrashed in this category. 56.8% to the Kings, 43.2% to the Devils. Power play, Kings were 1 for 4. They also had a shorthanded goal thanks to Kopitar in the second period, and the Devils were 1 for 5 in their power play opportunities thanks to Tyler Toffoli. Hits tied 20 apiece, block shots 21-13 in favor of the Devils, And I know I talked about Curtis Lazar getting a holding penalty at the most inopportune time, but he's been putting his body on the line and getting these big time block shots. So I got to give credit where credit is due. Giveaways, Devils led that department 6-3. Takeaways, Devils led it 5-4. Now, before I give the Devils a letter grade, let me just say this. I see people on social media saying, oh, the Devils are crap again. They're back to their old ways. This was not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. It's just like some things just didn't go the Devils' way in this case. So we talk about that shorthanded goal that Kopitar scored. Unfortunately, Lindy Ruff decided to take a gamble, and it didn't work because he decided to use his top power play unit a little too long. They were gassed, and Luke got beat, and Jack was slow to the back check. So that was just a risk that didn't fall into the favor of the Devils. Then I talked about in the previous segment, Jack Hughes had an open net opportunity after a penalty wasn't assessed to Arvidsson for tying him up on an open breakaway opportunity. And there were a lot of missed penalty calls in this game, and I even put that out on social media. So I don't think it was a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. I know the deserve to win-o-meter falls heavily into the favor of the Kings, but in this case, I'm just going to go with my gut and say that the Devils did have their chances. Unfortunately, and I really hate using this word, they just ran into some bad luck, but that's my overall assessment of the game. So if I had to give them a letter grade, I'll give them a C+ because it wasn't perfect, but they still made some decent opportunities to make up ground. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts, so leave a comment down below. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on a podcast streaming service, hit me up on my personal X Page app at TreyMatt4 or the show's X Page app at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you, so continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day in New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Catherine Bogart, one of the Devils team reporters, is set to appear on the show tomorrow. We're going to preview all things Stadium Series and hear her thoughts on the overall atmosphere. You do not want to miss it. And I will catch you guys in that episode. Thanks for listening once again.